Redditors who have a Ring doorbell, what the creepiest thing you have caught on it? I have a camera doorbell, not a Ring. The creepiest thing I ever saw was the night I had 2 cops come to my door. They stood outside the door talking to each other about if I was home or not and who would abuse me first. I was at home at the time. My dog alerted me by whining at the door, and I checked the cam. I listened to them talking for about 10 seconds before I called 911. The operator told me they didn't have cops in my area and to stay away from the door. Put at least one more locked door between me and them, and to stay on the line and quiet until the real cops could. I live around the block from the fire department, so it was less than 2 minutes later when a fire truck pulled up and the 2 fake cops ran off. Story 2. At 5-ish in the morning, sun was just starting to come up and it's the middle of winter. My husband, half asleep, answers the doorbell on his phone in bed next to me. It's a toddler wearing nothing but a pajama top and underwear. Husband says hello. Toddler says, "Can my son's name come out to play?" Husband, still half asleep, says not right now, maybe later, about 3 minutes later. Husband suddenly sits up as the reality of the situation dawns on him, and he rushes out of the house to track down a wandering toddler walking barefoot in the streets in freezing weather. Turns out my son's toddler friend from daycare, who's been to our house once for a play date, just walked straight out his front door, undetected, and memorized the route to our house. For me, it was the possibility of his little journey ending very differently than it did in a number of terrifying scenarios that still haunts me. Story 3. I was drunk as duck watching my parents' house when they were on vacation, woke up the next morning to a video my mom sent me. I was taking out the trash and dropped my phone in with the trash. I'm in my boxers trying to get my phone out of the trash can. My drunk ass falls into the garbage can, and I had a hell of a time getting myself out. I remember none of it. My mom proceeds to send that video to the rest of my family, and extend family, and some family friends. Scary, no, but pretty hilarious. Story 4? Not really creepy, but there's a serial gnomer in my neighborhood being caught on doorbell cam. She's dropping off gnomes on the unsuspected and walks away. Story 5. 6 people standing about 10 feet from my door and just staring at my house this past September. They were there, muttering to each other for almost 20 minutes before going to the next house on the row and muttering there too. My girlfriend thinks they were the Hoa, but I don't totally believe that. Story 6. Had mine detect the sound of someone screaming murder in the middle of the night. Was only like 2 seconds, then stopped and didn't happen again. Then there was the time. There was a shootout across the street, and it picked up the sounds of gunshots. I could hear the crack of the bullets on the opposite side of the house, but sadly, not on camera. Story 7. My little brother is a sleepwalker. This one time, he snuck out of the house while still asleep. My sister said she heard someone talking just outside the door, went to look, and saw my brother sat on the porch couch, apparently having a conversation with my grandpa. She says he was telling my grandpa, "I love you, and I'm going to miss you." My dad got him back inside the house without waking him up, and nobody gave much thought into what just had happened. Until a couple hours later when my uncle called telling us my grandpa had passed away while asleep. My little brother says he doesn't remember anything, but we got it on video. We can't hear what he's saying too clearly. But he was definitely talking to someone, and he sure as heck said, "I'm going to miss you," at least twice. Story 8. Honda Civic riding back and forth slowly around our neighborhood, playing ice cream truck music loudly, hoping it was a stupid prank and not something more sinister. Story 9. Around 6 a.m., an obviously homeless man rang our doorbell a few times. He began to reach his hands into his pants and talk to his junk. After a few seconds, he then tried to climb through a cracked window above the door. It was too tall and he gave up immediately. He then walked around the side porch, put all of his belongings nicely in a corner, and left. Never saw him again. Story 10. My mom saw a guy wandering around her yard with a baseball bat in hand late at night. Her, my brother, and our Great Dane went out to ask him what the heck he thought he was doing. Guy immediately ran off. Used to think security cameras at home were weird. Now I know they can give you a head start in case someone shady is about. Story 11. Dude crouching behind my car while me and my mom got out. Crept up right behind it and we didn't even notice. His face was covered. Didn't see until a day or two later watching random clips. Story 12. I have security cameras if that counts. I saw a person running through my yard high as a kite in their underwear, screaming at police at the timestamp of 4 in the morning. I have no idea how I didn't wake up to this as it ended in my front yard. I checked the cameras that morning because this person destroyed part of my fencing that they couldn't see while running around in the dark. And I woke up to that damage, and God knows what smeared all over our hood of the car. The police never notified us that this happened, and I wouldn't have ever known if I didn't have the camera. Story 13? I think I found a guy trying to stake out my place. He came up to my door, knocked it, tried to ring the doorbell was broken, and finally rang the Ring doorbell. He looked shocked to see it working, and he quickly took off in his car. My place was kind of burglarized a year before. I caught the burglar outside and screamed at him, "Come enter." Burglars usually look for certain aspects of a home before they try robbing it. It's possible your house looks like the best target in whatever neighborhood you're in. You don't gotta be Fort Knox, but it can help. By being more secure than your neighbors. You should take some steps to improve security if it's happened twice now. Adding motions lights is good. Thieves don't want to be seen while trying to break in. Trim any shrubbery. Again, they like hiding behind stuff. Don't put valuables by windows so someone can't look in and see something worth stealing. You can get a cheap alarm system with door and window sensors. But even something like putting those yard stakes in front of your house and stickers on your windows about a home security system can work whether you actually have one or not. You can also put subtle clues about a dog living there, like a chewed-up dog toy on the porch, or a sign that says, "Beware of dogs." You don't actually need a dog to do those. Check out your home on Google Maps and see if it looks vulnerable. If I were a thief, I would probably peruse Google Maps to check out houses before I went to a neighborhood. If yours looks like the weak link, you could request that Google blur it. Story 14. Have a security camera pointed at the back of the house toward my detached back garage. The weirdest thing that still ducks with me was late night on 4th of July. The noise of neighborhood fireworks kept the regular animals away. But my camera did pick up an individual hanging around the back of the house and neighbor's back lawn. Definitely was a person, but they were walking on all fours like a goddamn spider. Not once did they go back to walking on their legs. They were gangly looking, lean and not pudgy, also wearing a dark shirt and pants. Their face was always kept down. This creeper was crawling all around the back and into the neighbors' lawns on all fours for like 10 minutes before they ducked off and left the area picked up by the security camera. The next morning, a pile of human-sized crap plus a copious amount of vomit was found in the middle of my driveway at the back of the house. There were whole unchewed Skittles in the vomit. So, yeah, creepiest thing my outdoor camera has picked up. Gangly human crawling around the back driveway of my house on all fours while vomiting up Skittles. Story 15. I have some flower beds out front and they've gotten vandalized, so I got cameras to cover them. I also live down the road from student housing, so I get drunk kids stumbling through all the time. Every semester around finals. Various groups of kids come pay tribute to the Fae for luck by sitting around my jasmine bed that has a fairy house neighborhood in it. They praise the fairies, begging for luck, and leave tributes in the form of little snacks or small trinkets like bottle cap. It's hilarious and adorable. Story 16. I bought my ring when they weren't available in the UK. I imported it from America. Next door got broken into and the guy doing it was clearly looking at my doorbell wondering if it was indeed a camera or just some fancy new doorbell. I recorded him using their doorbell with his t-shirt over his finger to stop his prints, and him breaking in by kicking through the bottom panels of the door. I showed the video to the police and they said, "Aha, yep, we know him." I also caught him smoking a cigarette, throwing it on the ground and leaving that sweet DNA on the butt. Police picked him up, used the cigarette and my videos as evidence and charged him. He got 3 years at Her Majesty's pleasure. Story 17. It's not creepy, but I was just astounded. My father-in-law is a wood carver. He had made us this really nice bear cub climbing up on some rocks carved. It's super heavy, like 150 pounds of solid wood. Woke up one morning with a ring notification at like 4 a.m. the night before. I figured it was a car driving by or something and went to watch it. Some dude just walked up to our front porch, picked this carving up, and started running down the street with it. I was pissed because the carving was really nice, but completely amazed by the sheer strength to pick it up and run. Funny enough, our next-door neighbor found it on FB Marketplace, like 2 months later, and was able to get it back for us. The bear now has a few 2-inch threaded rods bolted through the deck and some additional blocking I put in. You have to be the mountain from "gotta pull this thing up now." Story 18? Related, when I was working in a restaurant bar, I watched a guy walk in around 536-ish. He didn't acknowledge me, just walked in and straight to the bathroom downstairs. It was just me and one table in the bar, and I've got a great view of the door from my perch. About 30 minutes goes by, and I notice the guy isn't coming upstairs, so I go down to check the washrooms, and they're empty. Then I check the closets, the staff room, and there's no sign of him. I walk back upstairs and ask the table if they say anyone come by, and they said they say someone go downstairs, so I asked if the person came up. They shrugged and said they weren't paying attention. I got kind of creeped out because I was watching the door the whole time and swear on my life I saw someone walk in. Cameras were checked later and they didn't pick up anyone. They do pick up me going downstairs to check around and the table upstairs looking up when he would have walked in, but he doesn't show up. Also, the following day, a very cool vintage beer lamp that was in a display vanished. The cameras show the lights going off overnight, and when they turn on, the lamp was gone. It was a big lamp. There were motion detectors who all picked up nothing. All the doors were locked and no sign of entry. Things would change place or go missing and then turn up. And there would also sometimes be animals in inexplicable parts of the restaurant, like squirrels or possums, just randomly appearing even though we had no pest problems or points of entry. None of this ever showed up on camera, Long story short, that place was haunted as duck. Story 19. 2 a.m., the dogs are going nuts. It is usually a cat, but they are not calming down. Sleepy and just awakened, it finally occurs to me to check the doorbell camera. There's a guy just hanging out on the front porch. He alternately sits on a windowsill or stands and leans against the wall. He gives the vibe that he is waiting in a way too long line, but does not try to ring the doorbell or knock. We call the police non-emergency line. He is not acting threatening in the slightest, just weird. Police pull up and talk to him. My best guess is that this was some sort of ambient sleepwalking or one of those cases where a UTI causes hallucinations. He does not have any idea that it is the middle of the night and thinks he is working and has to wait for the slacker in front of him to finish their job before he can get started. Story 20. My neighbor's mom looking to come beat me while I was home. I didn't realize she was there until later because I had headphones on at the time I was 24. And he was 37, I think. He was all pissy because I told him next time. I hear him hit his GIF. I'm calling the cops, no matter how much she begs everyone not to. So he sent his mom over rewatching that video. Just gives creepy vibes knowing that I was home but oblivious. Story 21. A couple of guys attacked my bushes with a machete and threw the branches in the driveway. My family thought I ran into the bushes and scolded me before I showed them the footage. Still don't know why this happened. Story 22. I watched a delivery driver get knuckle deep in their own nose and then plant a gangly-looking booger on one of our columns. That was the funniest. The creepiest? Our neighborhood is a common target for porch pirates. Our neighbors got a bunch stolen off their porch a few years ago, and we all put up cameras after that. You'd think porch pirates would recognize that many houses have cameras now. But you don't get to porch pirate status by being an intelligent person. I moved some cardboard boxes outside, intending to load them in the truck and take them to the town dump. I got busy and forgot I set them out on the steps. It got late. A porch pirate came along and picked up the main box that the rest were crushed into, thinking it was some expensive package. We were unaware anything was going on until the dogs went nuts, meaning someone was at the front door. I went out, took a quick peek, nothing. The dogs went nuts again a few minutes later. This time I went back outside armed. Wouldn't be the first time I need. As I approached the front door, something ran across our front yard and through both sets of gardens. I then heard some crapbox rev up and putter fart away. I checked security cam footage and witnessed that lowlife cram himself into the largest cardboard box to hide when I approached the door the first time. It's cool, though. I left some presents for the porch pirates last year, and they haven't been back since. Package up about 10 pounds of dog crap, old chicken broth, bonus if you let some chicken go rancid and toss that in too, and silver nitrate in a large Ziploc bag. Glue it upside down in a cardboard box so that the flaps contact the bottom. Glue the bottom of the bag against the flaps of the box. When someone opens the box, it tears the seal open and makes one hell of a mess that they will never be able to clean up. Story 20. I live alone, and my son recently installed a Ring doorbell. About 5:30 a.m., I got a notification that a person was seen at my door. I watched the video, and there was a really creepy person, was still dark, hanging around. I rang my son. He has the app to access the doorbell videos. Turns out it was me showing my dog. There was no one outside. Story 24. A neighbor's cat went missing, so we checked our Ring to see if they walked past our house. All we saw was a guy riding his bike down our street at 4 a.m. After we found a cage trap in the woods behind our house. We took a closer look at the video and realized the guy was riding his bike one-handed with the cat slung over his other shoulder. The police confirmed it was someone with a history of fighting dogs and was likely trapping cats for bait. We moved shortly after. Story 25 was working on and moving into a back house, apartment that wasn't quite ready yet. The creepy fall-down drunk contractor, who I had to let go from working on it, pulled up at 5 a.m. and parked but didn't get out of his van for several minutes. When he did finally get out, he was putting himself back into his pants and zipping up. Then he went through the gate and into the private patio, where the camera couldn't see him anymore, and was gone for 10 more minutes. After that 10 minutes, he reappeared back at his car without having retraced his steps back through the gate. I think he was looking all around to see if I had moved in yet. I'm a youngish single woman, and trying to catch me before I woke up if so. After that, I think he just walked through the private yard of the front house to get out. He cryptically texted me later that he noticed someone moved into the front house, and I freaked out because that someone is a single mom with 2 young kids. He came back a couple more times, but the cops were always too slow. But it's been a while since the last visit, so I think he's done now. Or pass, who knows. Story 26. Not creepy, but annoying. Our cat has figured it out and stands on the bin outside moving her paw. She literally just does to make us answer the door, then walks back out the house. We also have a cat flap. Story 27. The power line across the street burst into flames for a moment. Not a transformer, but the cable itself. Maybe it's not that unusual, but I've never seen anything like it. Story 28. There was a huge pile of crap by our front door, which we assumed came from a Great Dane or a Bernese MTN dog. Something huge, and the owner didn't pick it. My husband went through the night's vide. Oh, to see who the bad dog owner is so we'd know which of our neighbors sucks. But it wasn't a dog. It was a man we don't know. The footage was just bizarre. After he finished taking a crap, he then urinated on his heap leavings and then seemed to regard the results with great pride. Story 29. Bunch of cops with guns storming the house next door due to Q robbery. That led to me finding out my neighbor, who is so blind, he has a seeing eye dog, has an open carry permit, and a big handgun. Story 30. We had a guy approach our kitchen window where the kids were washing up, playing with his junk before he saw our camera and scarpered. Old lady down the street reported someone pleasure herself at her window barely 20 minutes later. Story 31. Mine. Nothing exciting. But one morning, my husband and I were out early for a run, and we saw a teenager walk up to a house, open the front door, and walk in. Seconds later, screaming, yelling, teenager books it out there and takes off down the street. About 3 minutes later, the neighbor posted in our Ring neighborhood group about some random kid walking into their house and scaring the crap out of them. Turns out that this kid was texted with a friend, and his friend told him, "Doors open, come on in," and he was at the wrong house. And also apparently, the wrong house keeps their front door unlocked. Ensue fierce neighborhood debate on kids walking around on their phones. Not knocking. Why is your front door unlocked at 6 a.m.? Story 32. Last week, my wife and I checked a notification that there was movement at the front door, but we checked it about an hour after it happened. There was what appeared to be a small child on our porch in a winter coat and standing motionless. With the way they were standing, we couldn't see their face. They stood like this for minutes, not moving, then just left. So creepy. My wife had recently put out a Christmas decoration. That was a holiday dinosaur, so we figured the kid was just looking at that. We moved into this house just a couple of months ago, so we don't know the kid. I'm on the lookout in case we're in a horror movie. Story 33. What's most scary is my Ring doorbell went off several times in the middle of the night for no reason. I changed the setting to video only wake instead of audio, video. It went on for about a month. Story 34. Oh man, I have a few. 1. At night, after dark, 2 men pulled into our driveway with their headlights off and began walking around our home, pointing their phone flashlights in through our dark windows. Once I noticed them, I turned on the lights, and both men quickly jumped into the vehicle and blew out of our driveway like a bat out of hell. Clearly, they were up to no good. 2. This one happened in broad daylight. While out for the day, an adult man approached our home with a children's bicycle in hand and began ringing our doorbell. We weren't around our phones at the time, so we didn't know this until later. He then hung out on our porch for about 20 minutes before taping a paper note to our mail slot, ditching the bike on our front lawn and leaving. Once we got home, we read the note. And the guy was saying that he had stolen the bike the night prior from our neighborhood while being chased and wanted us to find whoever it belonged to. He even left his name and phone number. Worried that it was some kind of scam and not wanting to be involved or in possession of stolen property, we turned it over to police who got a kick out of it and said they'd try to find the owners of the bike. At least the guy, seemingly, was trying to do the right thing by returning the bike, but maybe don't steal it in the first place next time, dude. 3. An older woman drove up to our house, walked up to our door, and began peeking in our front windows without knocking. She then left and came back a few minutes later, only to return to the porch and look in our windows again, and this time she knocked about twice. We weren't home and she never came back. I put up better curtains after that. Story 35. A mama bear and her cubs getting into our trash cans and then getting a little too curious about our cars and coming down the driveway to investigate. Our dogs scared them off as soon as they got too close to the house, but getting that alert and watching the video made the door between us suddenly feel very flimsy. Story 36. I have a camera in the hallway inside the house facing the door. Someone with a motorcycle helmet opened the front door, pet my dog, and then left. Checking the front yard camera, there was no motorcycle or car in the driveway. We changed the locks and got a security system that night. Story 37. Not my Ring camera, but my front porch camera, and also not creepy. I have a wooden plant stand on my front porch, and while we were away on vacation a few months back, we caught a big, fat raccoon climbing up on the middle shelf and knocking my philodendron off, and now the shelf permanently leans forward because Mr. Big Butt Raccoon decided he wanted to be King Kong. Story 38. A moth. Maybe it was a butterfly? I fear when I'm alone and the dark creeps into my thoughts. I fear it was a wasp that had learned the art of disguise. Yes, it could have been that. Story 39. I leave my house one morning, and there's a note on the patio table. Do you know that there's a meth house in your neighborhood at 123 S Cross Street? Changed house numbers. I take the note, go into work, and show my boss, who lives in the neighborhood. Then I remember I have a video doorbell. So we watch the video of the guy leaving the note. He's got a whole sheath of flyers. He's a good old boy in camo. We Google map the house, speculate wildly. Then I called the police. They send an officer who also lives in the neighborhood. I make a report, show the police the video, take a still to close up the face. Officer Tom thinks he knows the guy. I email the video and still to Tom. A week later, I write to him to find out what happened. Here's the thing. Camo guy saw a woman he knows whose husband is a met maker at that house. Officer Tom went to that house. Yes, wife was there, but husband is in jail, and there's no met made at that address. Tom also told Camo to quit bothering the neighbors. Story 40. Got an alert that someone was at the door, and my dog barked, but no knock. I thought I heard something, so I checked the camera, and a younger-looking guy had walked up and tried to unlock my front door, with what I guess was a key he found on the ground close to my house. In broad daylight, with our cars in the driveway. What the actual heck? Story 41. Years ago, living with several roommates, and my brother in his house in Florida. A guy gets sex on our front door, and my roommates wanted to open the door to see what was up. I noticed through the door camera that he had a gun behind his back when he turned to check the street. Told my roommates, told them to call the cops. I politely informed the guy through our doorbell that currently there was a shotgun pointed directly at him, and that I don't mind replacing a door and power washing the front porch a second time. He looked directly at the Ring doorbell, thought for a second or two, and walked away. Cops came a few minutes after he left, gave them screenshots of his face and what I had of his vehicle. Not gonna lie. When the guy looked directly at the camera before leaving, I may have squirted a bit of fear into my jammies. Story 42. Random guy comes to our door at 1 a.m., looks into the Ring, then puts something down on the doormat but doesn't ring the bell. About 15 minutes later, someone approaches the door quickly, takes it, and runs off. I saw 2 events in the morning and was like, what the heck? Seems super sketchy. Then my next door neighbor texted, saying he got home super late, ordered food, and the delivery driver dropped it at our house instead of his. Story 43. Where I live, our houses are surrounded by walls, so no one can actually walk from the street to the front door, as they would have to go through the gate first. The people across the street from us came over to ask if we had camera footage from the night before, as someone had broken into their house. When we reviewed the camera footage from the security camera, we saw that they had attempted to come into our house first by using an electricity box to try and climb over the wall. Fortunately, the wall and fence was still too high for them to get over, but it was scary nonetheless. Story 44. Don't have a Ring doorbell, do have a security cam by the front door. Maybe a year or so ago, I was home alone with my 2 dogs. This is relevant. We used to have Jehovah's Witnesses come around a lot. We have a gate that blocks the house, but since I was waiting for my mom to get home, it was open. Anyways, I was in the other room and my mom texted me saying she got a notification that there was movement in front of the house and asks if it was me. I went to look out the window and saw the guy with a bunch of pamphlets trying to look through the blinds to see if we were home. This is where the dogs come in. Our dogs are big, really big. Our little dogs is 100-pound retriever, and the other is a 150-pound dog the size of a small bear. They are both absolute sweethearts, but they can damn intimidating. They also go nuts when they hear someone knock on the door. So I went out of sight of the guy on our porch and knock on a wood cabinet to wake up the dogs, who promptly lost their minds. The guy didn't appreciate 2 huge dogs marking at his face through a window and left. We barely see Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. Story 45. I had an insane vagrant-looking person on my front porch for about 10 minutes at 3 a.m. He was having a conversation with an imaginary person. I could make out him saying something like, "I'll get the shovel, Tommy. Just don't hit me anymore." Story 46. Once I stepped outside to go to work and found white fur everywhere. I asked Hubs to check the cameras, thinking someone had hit a rabbit. Turns out there was a cat fight between a couple big, fluffy cats. Another time, a neighbor about 7 houses down decided to put a large entertainment cabinet on the corner for free. I lived on said corner and asked nicely to move it as I was having a party that evening. They refused, so we put it on a handcart and took it back to their house. They literally dragged it back to the corner. We took it back. The next morning, it's sitting behind our vehicles, in pieces. It had been dragged too much, so I take all the pieces back and put them behind their vehicles. Finally had to call the cops and ask them to speak with her. She claimed it wasn't her when I had her on camera, huffing and puffing as she shoved the cabinet down the sidewalk each. Story 47. The little red flag thing on our mailbox rising up and coming back down several times. There was no wind, no storms, no weather, complete, clear night. We decided to convince ourselves that it was the wind so we don't get freaked out by a paranormal event. Little after a year later, we caught on the inside kitchen camera, the roll of paper towels completely coming undone by itself. That one really freaked us out since it took several seconds of continuous unrolling. Now we have a praying candle, a Bible in the house. Story 48. We have an old horseshoe door knocker. My phone chimed. Then someone gently knocked with the knocker. My daughter looked out the window and said, "Mom, I'm 4 Oreos away from a bear." The picture from the Ring camera is on my profile. Story 49. A previous owner of my house had installed a mezuzah on the door. About once a year in the early spring, a car will pull up in front of our house. An older man will get out, walk to the door, then touch the mezuzah, then get back in his car and leave. It's not the previous owner, but it may be the person who put it. Story 50. Creepy until we figured pout that it was just smart animal behavior. I have a home where, because of code, the front door is actually on the 2nd level. It's 1.5 flights of stairs up. The home looks out across an open field. We have one or more foxes that will use our porch as a way to identify prey in the field. Story 51. I caught one of the neighborhood kids attempt to ding-dong ditch me. It was rather cute. He slid up the side of my entryway so I wouldn't be able to see him looking out the peephole and rang the bell and ran off. Rumi caught the whole thing on his app and sent it to me. Story 52. The cutest was a few weeks ago. At night, my back porch cam captured a mom raccoon and her babies. They all climbed on the porch, and Mom Raccoon waddled over to our trash can and patted it with her little hand. Paw. It seemed like she was teaching them. Here's where to find the treats, kids! Like it was a wilderness cookie jar. Another evening, a coyote came right to the edge of our front porch, squatted, and took a leisurely pee, and the camera captured the event. We often hear coyotes down by the creek, but didn't realize they came so close to the house. Our camera often captures deer, possums, the occasional fox. I guess living where I do, the creepiest thing is realizing just how much wildlife wanders through my field at night. If an apocalypse happened, it wouldn't be any time at all until they banded together and ate me for dinner and took over my house for their Animal Kingdom headquarters. Story 53. My friend was awoken by his Ring doorbell alert in the early hours. Coming up to his front door was an armed police raid, fully dressed for a party, helmets, ballistic shields, the lot. He had a polite chat with the police via Ring. They broke the door down anyway. Ex-girlfriend had made an allegation of abuse, so he had to surrender his licensed shotguns a week previously. She later had said he also had crime links and unlicensed weapons in his house, hence the raid. He wasn't actually in the house when they raided, but got to see it all play out via Ring via his phone. They searched the house and found nothing. The crime and gun allegation was a lie, and the abuse allegation was also dropped when she had lied about at least one incident, as it had all been recorded via Ring. Story 54. My brother-in-law had left our front door unlocked. At around 12 p.m., my wife and I get notified that there's someone at the door. We see that it's two cleaning ladies. We don't really pay too much attention to it and figure they just got the wrong house. A little while after, she texts me about it and tells me to look at the recordings and asks if I know anything. And I said the same thing, probably the wrong house. What I did not notice is that there is 2 recordings with 20 minutes gap. I come home after work. Everything normal. Get into the room and notice our bed is made. I jokingly text my wife, OMG, the ladies came and did our bed, thinking she'd come home and done it and then left to do errands. She replies, what the heck, really? And full in panic. Look around. See if things are missing. Looks like they had the wrong street. They left her realizing. Got a bed made out of it. Story 55. A story from a friend of mine in AA, who was herself the creepy thing on the doorbell camera. In a blackout, she was walking home from a party, tripped and fell, and ducked her head up pretty badly. She was bleeding a lot and apparently just trying to get back home anyways. It seemed she finally decided she might need help, went up to a door and just started knocking on it, saying she needed help. Someone walking by saw this, and I guess could tell from far enough away that something was wrong with this chick. They called 911. She was taken off. Woke up in the ICU the next day, and that was near the end of her drinking day. She figured out what she herself did maybe a week after, when a local news story popped up about a woman begging for help at someone's home, and the footage was from the doorbell cam. Story 56. Not my story, but close friend. They have a second camera in their alley for their garage. One night, the camera catches a neighbor trying to make friends with a raccoon. He catches one, hit it. Police were called. Story 57. Nothing creepy, nothing ever happens in my neighborhood. But when our neighbor was very sick, and eventually passed, we looked through that cam instead of the actually door window to see how he is. When the paramedics and emergency doctor came, we would look how long they stayed and who it is, because we know most of them, and later we would see when the doctor arrived so we would know that he passed. So basically, we were the creeps. Story 58. Haven't caught anything creepy, but about once a month, we have about 13 deer in our yard in the middle of the night just hanging out. Lived here for years and didn't know they came down from the mountain this far. Story 59. Not exactly a Ring doorbell, but I think this fits. At work, we had thieves breaking into our trucks at night. So after one such incident, I was poring over the previous night's security camera footage. Most of the office was still working from home, so it was silent as a tomb as I stared at this black and white footage for signs of movement. At around 3 a.m., I noticed a wispy something out in front of our main entrance. That went by every few minutes, but it wasn't shaped like a human, nor vehicle. And the movements didn't line up with someone walking up to the door or along the sidewalk. After isolating the exact times and going through frame by frame, I realized a spider was weaving a web right next to the camera, and it was so close that the camera couldn't focus when it would enter into the frame. Story 60. It was my camera, but the door to my buddy's apartment door kept getting covered with this gel to prevent him from locking his door. He had the apartment change the locks a couple times before buying his camera. Only a day later, the vandal walked past his door with a black hoodie over her head, took a look at the door, then kept walking. She came back, put more crap on his door, then walked off. He eventually took a day to literally sit at home to catch her since it was happening so often. He finally did, and it was this scrawny old lady that was pissed at several residents for their dogs barking. The apartment eventually removed her, and also helped my friend move into a different unit just in case. The initial videos catching her with that hoodie over her head after all the times wondering who was doing this was creepy. Story 61. A couple years ago, a 22-ish-year-old door-to-door salesman came and knocked on the door like a sheriff with a warrant, so that was already startling. I turned off the TV and ran upstairs to my dad. He asked who it was, and they replied with Moxie. Moxie is an extermination company. My dad told him he wasn't interested, but then dude started banging on the door. So my dad grabs his gun and tells him to leave immediately. He pretends like he can't hear him and incessantly kept at it. My dad yelled that he was going to call the cops, and that's when he heard and ran off calling my dad a git. When we looked at the footage, he had the most sinister smile. Really eerie. Story 62. Used to teach online in the early hours of the morning and saw a man I was pretty sure I saw at an intersection a few days before with a cardboard sign approach the house. Once he got closer, I switched to the ring to observe. He crawled up the stairs on hands and knees, then came to the door in a crouched position and scratched on the door. I was freaked out. My Jack Russell is usually asleep when I teach, so he didn't immediately react. I was still teaching, so quickly put myself on mute and yelled, "Who wants a treat?" Doggo immediately awoke and heard the scratching and went bonkers. I saw the guy running down the drive and was creeped out for several days. Story 63. A friend of mine had a woman come up to his home at 3 in the morning, drunk, and try to open the door with her set of keys. She then started banging, calling out some woman's name, which woke up my friend and one of his sisters. The woman then began to make threats. Cops came. Turns out the woman walked for 3 hours from a nightclub in the next town over and had gotten crazy drunk there. She was thrown out of the clubby because she was trying to start a fight with the other women because none of the guys were hitting on her or something. Her home was 3 miles from the club in the other direction. Story 64. I brought my ring inside to see how crappy I'm sleeping. The creepiest thing I've recorded is me grabbing the ring at 3 a.m., looking absolutely possessed and mumbling to myself about who knows. The video stops with the ring face down on my bed, and the next video is it back in the spot it originally was. I have zero memory of any of it. Story 65. Someone was trying my door. I obviously spoke through and said, "What the actual heck you doing?" They bricked it and was saying, "Ooh, oh sorry mate, wrong house." Story 66. Kind of related, but about 2 days after I was hit by a truck. Whole other thing. But my mother had noticed a man who she didn't know in our alley. We have one for the front and back of the house. Peeking around our garage, staring at our house. My mother, and had yelled for him. I ran upstairs and out the back door yelling at him until he had scurried off. Well, after he was arrested, we had found out he was previously convicted of murder. Story 67. It's not actually a Ring doorbell, just a security cam. But we caught mountain lion casing my car late one night. Story 68. I woke up one morning to a huge turd on my front porch. After hosing it off and getting that cleaned up, I ordered a Ring doorbell. A few weeks later, a guy came up to my porch with toilet paper in his hand, seen the camera, and ran off. Found out it was a kid in the neighborhood, who then also later let his friend get arrested for having his substance in his friend's trunk of his car. Story 69. We had a series of break-ins in our neighborhood when these first came out, and we got one because he often worked late and I would be home alone with the kids. Since they were so new, most people didn't know it was a camera. One night my phone pinged that there was movement. I pulled it up and it was 2 guys talking about if they should try the going to the back to get into the house. I was on the line with 911 so fast. The cops arrived so fast. Caught them both, and it turned out these were the 2 responsible for all the other break-ins. They didn't realize that I was home. Neighbors all got one after this. Story 70. I was in my basement on the phone with a friend. It was close to midnight on a Friday evening. All of a sudden, my partner came running down the stairs, screaming. Turns out, the Ring notification had gone off and he was wondering why, as the dog was upstairs in bed with him. He came downstairs to ask what was going on and saw that there was a guy at the door, peeking in. We reviewed the Ring camera and the guy had actually bent down and looked into the small basement windows, then proceeded to the door. He 100% saw me down there as I was directly across from the windows. We got blinds after this, but it took me weeks before I could even sleep. We ended up moving about a year later. Story 71. Low level comparatively, but definitely creeped us out. This past Halloween, I wasn't home and started getting tons of alerts from our Ring doorbell. I checked it out, and there was a frog standing in front of the camera, moving back and forth, presumably chasing bugs. I sent it to my girlfriend and even said, "Look, he's dancing." We had a laugh. 2 hours later, I got home, and there was the frog in front of the doorbell, in the mouth of a gigantic snake that was under the molding around our front door. My girlfriend grew up in Florida and has no fear of snakes, so she came out and chased it off with a broom and said it was harmless, but she still didn't want it around our front door. Story 72. We have a Ring camera with a floodlight in our backyard. Since our house is on a corner lot, We get traffic passing by and with no fence. The light for the cars at night reaches our camera. There is a weird illusion with car lights and the angles of the camera that makes it look like a little ghost boy is running across our backyard when cars go by at night. Story 73. I once caught this man at my doorstep who repeatedly kept ringing the doorbell and calling out a name that was either Serena or Selena. He was there for like 30 minutes until he started to kick my door. I wasn't home at the time, but my girlfriend was, and she called the police. Obviously, he was on something. Story 74. A mountain lion stalking our goats and chickens. We have a goat and chicken enclosure, and one night the mountain lion jumped on top of a Chevy Nova we're restoring, then jumped from the Nova onto a little trailer we use on the property, and could be seen staring into the enclosure. We lock up our goats and chickens at night because 8 months prior, we lost 3 goats to what we assumed was a mountain lion. The creepy thing was just how massive an animal like that is. We have a small cat that tears me up when we play fight. I can't imagine an 80 pounds version of that. Story 75. Not a Ring doorbell, but a small camera in my bedroom window. I caught a man watching me through the window in real time. My phone alerted me that there was movement outside my window, so I opened the live stream and watched the man watch me. Story 76. In my old home, the neighbor hit his wife almost to death. Then the SWAT coming in and taking him down. Story 77. Not me, but my relative said there was a guy roaming the street in front of his house carrying an assault rifle. He had just bought his house and had just installed a security system which includes the Ring doorbell. Story 78. A floating light that looked like a spectral entity moving around near my door. I had hours of footage of it and couldn't figure it out. While my wife and kids 100% believed we had a ghost. I wasn't convinced, but it gave me goosebumps watching the light meander around our door. Finally found a clip where my porch light came on in the early morning and illuminated the culprit. About 10 feet above the spectral light was a spider hanging from its web, swaying randomly in the breeze. The infrared camera must have reflected off his eyes and caused an anomaly to appear 10 feet below the spider, apparently in midair near my door. Story 79. Literally creepy. We have a gecko that hangs out on top of the camera. Apparently he figured out that moths and other critters are attracted to the infrared and he ambushes them. He looks like an alien when his head fills the whole camera shot. Story 80. A disheveled man at my door very early one morning trying to buy substances. He said he'd come from across town. He wouldn't leave. Kept ringing the doorbell and banging. I yelled at him to go away. Wrong house. All sorts of things. I called the police. When they eventually arrived hours later, they asked me if we just moved here. No. Anyone else lived here? No. I showed the guy the footage. I did mention to the police to the house at the end of the street, which had a reputation. Eventually, the house at the end of the street was tagged and finally demolished. Story 81. Not a Ring cam, just a porch can. The creepiest thing I've seen? Raccoons. Like 12 of them lined up on my porch staring at my front door for what seemed like a really long time. Story 82. One night I was out at dinner with my family and we come home and check the Ring doorbell videos and find one of a girl like a young child who was trying to sell cookies. She knocked on the door, rang the doorbell, and then changed the selling cookies scheme to selling brownies. My 3 dogs were going ballistic in the living room window, which is a pretty large window. She waved to the dogs and said, "Hi, doggies," and at one point opened our screen door and then tried to open the actual door into the house, which obviously was locked. Thank God, it was super sketchy. Story 83. Oh, and a more recent one at our new place. We have a camera in the backyard, looks out into a field. Barrel sauna in the backyard, facing out that you can just see on the edge of the camera. 2 a.m., the sauna door swings open twice with a pause in between like 2 people went in one after another. 2 minutes later, door swings open again twice, just like before. Never saw any people. Went to check in the morning and the door was securely latched, but inside was a bunch of frozen mud. Story 84. Earlier this week, I caught video of a guy who walked up to my door and hung a cloth, reusable shopping bag from my mailbox. The bag contained one old work glove and a crumpled up, wet, partially frozen, it was cold that night, t-shirt. Basically, decided to give me his trash. I promptly threw it in the garbage can without investigating anything closer. It was quite unnerving. Story 85. Not too creepy, but there was a man in my area for a time that would wear a jumpsuit and a TV on his head. And he would randomly leave old TVs and monitors on people's porches. Dude hit up like 50 homes. Never caught. Story 86. Not a doorbell, but a proper CCTV camera. And not creepy either, just infuriating. Every Christmas, we used to have this massive inflatable snowman up. One day, someone came in and beat him. Story 87. More like diffused the creepiness. Woke up to our door wide open in the morning. Looked around and all the electronics were untouched. Didn't look like we were robbed. Checked the kids. Everything was fine. Went back on the Ring cam to find out our cat, who always jumped up at the door to get us to open it. Finally hit the jackpot and pulled the door lever down and walked right in. Of course, he didn't close the door behind him. Story 88. Cops running past my garage ring and front door ring, chasing suspects of car break-ins at about 2 a.m. second was just after I hooked up Alexa to Ring. She announces there is someone at your front door when they stand in front of the door. Like 3 a.m. Alexa announces, there is someone at the front door. Scared the duck out of me. Turned out it was a deer, just chilling on my doormat. Story 89? A raccoon saunter by, stop, and slowly turn its head and look at the camera. Like he knew I was watch and was sending me a message that he was coming to get me. Legit creeped me out. Story 90. Woke up at 6 a.m. and saw an alert that went off at 1 a.m. Rainy night, I see one guy crouch sneaking up my driveway and squats behind my wife's car. He looks like he's keeping a lookout on the street. And you see a car slowly drive by my house and leaves. The guy then proceeds to run away. Crap was weird as duck. Story 91. We had neighbors missing quite a few packages during Christmas season a few years back. One day I received an email stating a package was delivered only to find it missing when I got home. I reviewed camera footage, and it turns out it was actually the postal employee herself stealing packages. I reported it, and they found packages in her car and in her home. Story 92. My aunt showed me some footage from her front doorbell of a guy in what looked like a beekeeper's mask. He walked past the front door and into the neighbor's yard and vanished into the woods behind the house. He had a small bag with him and nothing else. She let her neighbor know and showed her the video, and she didn't recognize him either. He never came back after that. Story 93. My neighbor has a Ring, and it caught someone checking car doors to see if they'd open. Her video wasn't clear, and she asked me to see if my dash cam got a better view. I wouldn't have even known to look without her telling me. And as you'd expect, we turned the videos over the cops, and they did nothing. Story 94. A brief view of the 3 guys that came up behind me and robbed me at gunpoint right in front of my house. Unfortunately, where I was standing when it happened is obscured by a bush, but there was the brief glimpse and audio of it happening. Story 95. My ex-roommate taking naked pictures of herself after a heavy snowfall. Creepy, eh? Because the last thing I wanted to see was my roommate naked, and B, because I know the pics were for her married boyfriend. Story 96. 2 guys checking porch, front door handle, and car doors. My wife's car was unlocked, but I don't think they took anything. There were a few cars stolen in our neighborhood around that time, so my guess is they were looking for Story 97. Not creepy, but literally yesterday while I was at work, saw on the Ring some dude steal an Amazon package in front of our door. It was a pair of shoes for my wife for Christmas. Petty. Story 98. Not a Ring, but essentially the same thing. I've seen several things. I once saw a coyote wander around my front yard. Once saw a delivery guy trip and eat crap after tossing my package. Was funny. But I also once saw a man staring into my doorbell after due with something on my front porch. Story 99. I live in a small village of small to modest homes, with the exception of 2 mansions that belong to the founders. I live across from one of those mansions. One day, my camera caught the new people from next door. Together with a professional photographer, setting up chairs at the end of my driveway for a family photo shoot, presumably with the mansion in the background. Dream on! Story 100. One of the men stalking me parked outside my house for 2 hours. Blue surgical mask on despite being alone in the car. He didn't leave the car and stayed parked until I closed my blinds. He drove off minutes after they were closed. Best part, my local police department doesn't give a crap and wouldn't even update my report when I called about this. Story 101. Some old guy, Wrangler jeans plus dress shirt, legit, walked up on my back patio and just turned to one side then to the other and walked away. Then he stood in a dark corner away from the camera, and my roommate went outside and saw him. Came to get me, then the guy was gone. Weirdest experience ever. Story 102. Not creepy, but really sad. When my girlfriend's grandfather was declining with his dementia, we caught him watching us leave for work one day, and just standing outside, arguing with people who weren't there. This was one of the wake-up calls to how bad things were getting. He's getting the care he needs now. Story 103. Not me, but my aunt has. It caught some guy walking up to her front door and walking away as soon as he noticed the doorbell. My gut tells me he was up to no good. Story 104. Woke up one morning and was speed reviewing video from the night before with my finger until I saw the pumpkin on our front porch move spots 3 times. Finally watched it at normal speed and realized the wind had blown it around, but in my sleepy haze, I almost had a heart attack thinking my pumpkin was possessed. Story 105. Nothing too serious, just my neighbor being a Her excuse made it worse. The peering into my door was to tell me about a weeks-old slip from a Story 106. Not my Ring doorbell, but from someone I know, a guy just came in at 3 a.m. and left an unscrambles box on the porch, opened in the morning, and the box had a large praying mantis. Pretty weird if you ask me. Story 107. A woman coming up the stairs stops just at the top and stares at my front door. She stares blankly for a second, then she whispers something as if someone was waiting for her at the bottom. No one was there. Then she turns around, goes down the stairs, and disappears around the corner. Story 108. We have a front door and back door ring. Creepiest thing is just a spider going over the cameras. I get a lot of wildlife on the back camera. Cats, raccoons, possums, and one time a deer. Story 109. I have a camera in my door and it caught one dog and one cat just staring at it. After some days, a guy with a television head just appeared and left in television. Don't know if those events were related, but it was really scary. Story 110. Not me, but a friend. He lives directly across from a park. One night, someone drove a stolen van into the middle of the park, doused it in gas, and torched it. It exploded around midnight, waking my friend up. He got it all on video. Story 111. Got a notification. Watched the footage. At first, there was nothing there. Then, out of nowhere, something comes flying at the camera. It scared the crap out of me. Turns out it was a grasshopper that landed on the camera. Story 112. Partial view of a fight next door, then the cops banging on my door. Was never on the news, and there was no follow-up from the cops. Pizza delivery people, door-to-door salesmen, etc. What's the most NSFW thing you saw after ringing the doorbell? Story 1. Might not be exactly NSFW, but I used to deliver regularly to this methead, who would be too ducked up to count her own money. She suddenly, after 2 years, got her crap together. She started answering the door in her work clothes with her hair tied up. Her house started getting cleaner. She never did get rid of the giant paper chandelier that was made for a living room much bigger than hers. I watched her relapse and get clean several times. I sincerely hope she's doing it. Story 2. Half-naked drunk couples about to or just finished sex. Occasionally, groups of people smoking will order pizza because they know the pizza guy has to be cool with it. Story 3. I used to work as a personal tutor. Nothing too heavy. I'd go around to people's houses in the evenings and teach their kids maths, English, exam technique, that sort of thing, which meant that I usually got half-terms, weeks off, as most people didn't really want their kids to have tutoring when they weren't in school. One woman didn't cancel her kid's class. I figured because they were coming up to exam season, so I didn't really question it. And so I went along with my little whiteboard and revision guides and everything, same as usual. The mother answered the door in a pretty expensive-looking silk dressing gown, unusual for her because she always had a pretty strict, straight-to-business vibe about her, and a full face of makeup even though it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I've never seen such a look of disappointment on anyone's face before or since. She hurriedly explained to me that her daughter wasn't home and she didn't want a class that week, thank you very much, and pretty much pushed 20 pounds, my hourly rate, into my hand for my trouble. Fair enough, no skin off my nose. Free money as far as I'm concerned. I got back in my car, and a couple of minutes later, I saw a man who was emphatically not her husband head up the path at the side of the house. I'm not saying she was having an affair, but even enough I tutored the daughter for another 6 months. I never saw the husband again. Funny that. Story 4. Not really NSFW, but I deliver pizzas, and we have a regular named John. The first time I ever delivered to John, who lives in a duplex complex, I heard the most angry shouting from inside. I rang the doorbell. The yelling went on for another few seconds, and John came to the door acting kind of funny. He tipped huge, like $10 on a $15 order, and thanked me profusely and closed the door. My first assumption was that John was yelling at his girlfriend, wife. This was not your average disagreement yelling either. Imagine a drill instructor yelling at new recruits, turned up 5x. I figured he probably beats his wife and was trying to cover his ass for being caught screaming, tipping me big to put me at ease and make sure I didn't run to any authorities. Felt pretty sleazy. Turns out he's a retired Marine, huge alcoholic, and also suffers from pretty bad PTSD. He lives alone with his dog and is oftentimes beyond any form of coherence if he's been drinking. I found him passed out on his porch, unable to write tips, slurring everything into one long word. According to my managers, John's a super nice guy with some demons. I've come to conclude he is yelling either at himself, or maybe he's suffering from delusions or schizophrenia. It makes me sad to think about, but I always like delivering to him because he seems so thankful every time. The dog always appears happy, and he doesn't seem to be yelling at a dog. Yelling at a dog versus at a person is pretty different. He genuinely loves his dog, and it's probably his only source of companionship. Story 5. Partially NSFW, but more so sad. Delivered to a trailer once, a woman maybe 35 answered the door. Behind her was who I assumed to be husband or father, but couldn't tell. He was the most overweight person I'd seen in my life, like the kind of person who is completely bedridden and has a show on TLC. He was naked, though it's not like I saw much more than his stomach. He was screaming at her the entire time I was there, because she'd only ordered 2 pizzas for him instead of 3. This was in addition to a few subs, some wings, etc., that they'd ordered, presumably just for him. It was depressing, really, though they didn't tip. Story 6. Oh man, where to start? Been delivering pizzas for close to 3 years. Sadly, older men are more comfortable being naked around strangers than hot girls. I've had a lady answer the door in not much leather. She had a few other girls inside laughing. That was a really nice start to my day. Witnessed a full-on domestic abuse out in the street. Don't think I'll ever forget the sound of a woman screaming in fear of her life. I was the only person who called the police and stayed on the line, even though there were a few other people watching from windows. They got the guy on his way out. Last I heard, the woman was doing well. Opened the door to what looked like a few kilos of substances or something sitting on the table next to the door. Dude pulled out a massive roll of $20 to pay. Delivered a pizza to a massive apartment building. On my way out, a barely dressed lad ran out of an elevator past me holding his clothes. A few moments later, a guy ran out after him and chased the guy to his car and cracked the screen banging on it as the guy hauled ass out of there. A good-looking girl answers in the classic men's long-sleeve shirt and no pants looking real good. What I wasn't expecting was a really old dude coming around the corner in much less than a classic men's long-sleeve shirt. Delivered to that guy's house a good few more times. Always with a much younger girl who never looked super happy. And he always had to be near the door, too. Delivering to parties when there were plenty of substances around. Always got offered drinks and substances as a tip. Same apartment place as the guy with substances on the table. There was an escort who ordered a few times. Pretty sure she was dating the dealer. She was really nice and always asked about my night and my dog. A lot of the time when she came out into the car park to get the food, a few med heads would come out to ask her if she wanted to party and about buying substances and stuff. One time she came out looking pretty beat up, and that was the last time I saw her. No idea what happened to her, but I hope she's doing okay. One of those aforementioned Met heads was a really tiny man. Kind of looked like maybe heavy use stunted his growth. One night I'm walking up to those apartments and I hear footsteps running behind me. I turn around expecting to get jumped, but it was this tiny guy running real quick past me. Shoots into one of the buildings and goes through. On my way out, I see the cops checking the street in a car. I pretty quietly point towards the building he went into and tell them he went through to the other side and was long gone. They were like, yeah, we figured, cheers, and drove off. There was a nightmare lady who was on our unofficial blacklist for a while. Always gave us grief every time she ordered. It would be crap like ordering half and half, then swapping toppings around to make it look like it was made wrong. Anyway, one night she ordered, and I opened the door, and on her couch in full view was a really obese old guy, totally naked, just chilling there with his 2 inches of furious chode staring back at me. When she called up to complain and get a replacement, I sent one of the younger drivers to give it to her. No way I was going back. Had a big old ginger guy always answer the door in nothing but tighty whities. Saw him in clothes only once when he came into the store to pick up instead of getting it delivered. These are just the ones that stick out in my mind immediately. Story 7. Oh, my husband was someone's NSFW before. It was probably NSFL. Many eons ago, some of his friends got blasted drunk and ordered Chinese food delivery. One of the friends had a fetish French maid's outfit with a petticoat and garters and everything, and they all decided that husband should answer the door wearing it and hand the delivery guy money out of the garter for a laugh. Except my husband is stocky like an ox, and his chest hair starts at his beard and goes down to his feet. I didn't know him back then, and there aren't any pictures, but probably he looked like a tribble in a fishing net. That delivery guy is likely still in therapy. Story 8. This is my life. I'm single. My neighbor's single. We live way back off the road. Houses were originally built, and the same family lived in the 2 houses. She came to me one day and asked if I would be offended if she did her yard work naked. Of course I would not be. Well, come to find out she's a nudist. She has people over a lot, and they walk around naked. Sometimes it's guy, but mostly women. Some nasty, some not. I see a lot going on over there and love it. Best neighbor ever. Story 9. Man in only robe comes to door, asks if I want to join. I peek in and see 2 naked women on the bed. I hand him his pizza and leave. Story 10. Oh, let's see. People of various ages and genders coming to the door in towels, obviously fresh from the shower. Some even managed to keep the towels on the entire time. There was pantless Santa Claus. He was a regular. There was the woman whose black sweater became very see-through after stepping into the sunlight. You'd be surprised how often I deliver to a hotel and interrupt their sex. Breastfeeding women. Regular, orders about once a week, always has multiple half-naked women running around his house. I would fully expect to see a table with a mountain of substances on it somewhere in his house. Just weird. Delivered to a trailer parked in someone's backyard. Guy pays for food, then says, "Dinner's here, kiddies," and about a dozen cats come out of the surroundings and trailer as he sets the pizzas on the ground and opens them up. I noped out of there real quick. Bonus, delivering to 2 10-year-old girls in a trench coat and a fake mustache. I've never laughed that hard on a delivery before. Yes, one was on the other's shoulder in one trench coat. Oh, this one happened to a coworker of mine. She's 40 years old. She delivers late night to a DoubleTree hotel. After knocking, she hears a whispered voice on the other side of the door. Crap, it's a woman. Then after another moment, a 20-something blonde, wearing nothing but chain nipple clamps, answers the door. She hears a guy's voice in the room, but never sees him, after paying for the order. The woman tried to invite her into the room, but she noped out of there extremely quick. I told her that was either a potential penthouse forum post or a robbery. This same driver also delivered to a hotel while the current Grateful Dead were touring through town, and as a tip from some old hippies was given a small card that had a single sticker in it. Story 11. Adult shoot in a motel. Guy answers the door wearing a robe. This motel doesn't provide robe. Some sort of spotlight on a stand is set up in the room, illuminating the bed. Adult shoot is the only explanation I could come up with. Different motel. Older, think 70 guy asks if there are any adult shops around. I tell him where the closest one is. He then asked if I wanted a tip, which I of course said yes. He asked me if I wanted a BJ. Story 12. I can relate to pizza delivery people, etc. I work in hotels. Tons of crazy stuff has happened. One that comes to mind is a group of like 4 girls asked for some extra towels or something, and I was free, so I decided to run them up myself. The doors crack, so I knock, and they tell me to come in. I walk in, and 2 are naked, and the other 2 are in bra and panties. I'm male, by the way. They didn't bother to cover up or seem embarrassed, so I gave them the towels. They said thank you, and I left. Can't say I minded, but it was very strange. Story 13. Late to the thread, but I'm a pizza guy in an already not wonderful area, and aside from the occasional people you don't want to see in their underwear answering the door in their underwear, one delivery stands out. Took a run late at night to one of the lower-class roach motels in the area, and it's on credit card. So when I'm making the exchange, I hand the guy the slip, though the door that he's barely holding open enough to hand it through, and I watch as he signs but doesn't put a tip. No worries there. Any pizza guy or gal will tell you, stiffs happen and there's no point worrying about it. But after he hands it back, I notice him check his pockets, so I think, okay, maybe he doesn't want it on the card and has a couple bucks. But he clearly comes up empty. So I hand him the pie and this plays out him. Hey, sorry man, I ain't got no tip for you. Me. Oh, that's fine, sir. It's no problem. Him. Nah, man, wait. And he starts looking around for a second before opening the door and gesturing like Monty Damn Hall on Let's Make a Deal. You want to go with my girl. And I notice in the dark, on the bed is this thick girl laying on her stomach, naked, ass jiggling in the wind. Now this may be the stereotypical pizza guy fantasy, but I'm trying to get money, not stads, and I'm certainly not trying to get with someone too cracked out to notice her guy pimping her out for a cheese pizza. Me, no, that's okay, sir. Him, nah, it's cool, man. She gives great dome me. I'm good, sir. And I turned on my heel and got the duck out to dodge. Pro tip. Most pizza people doing this for any length of time really aren't interested in you finding another way to pay. You not paying means it comes out of our pocket, so any desperate housewives or husbands with a fantasy or sex-positive people who don't have an issue with getting some in exchange for a cheese stick, you might snag a new kid who buys into the adult plots. But most of us are just trying to earn money for bills and can't be paying for your order just to indulge. Story 14. I used to deliver for a certain papa of the pizza industry, and we used to deliver to this one pretty poor part of town that was mostly motels and ish. A rule that most of the hotels had was that you couldn't go upstairs to the... But I'm not waiting for Jim to come downstairs with his lazy ass when I've got pizzas getting cold in the car. First one was a hotel room with a few guys making a ruckus, and when they opened the door, they're snorting. Either substances the desk at the hotel then offered me some as a tip. Needless to say, I didn't accept. Second was this really chill guy who I know for a fact was a dealer. One day, I guess he ordered pizza a little too soon after accepting a shipment. He and his coworkers had many large Ziploc bags on the table and scales out. Definitely felonious quantities where I live. Finally, was where I had a gun pulled on. Not like to rob me, but because the guys were gang-affiliated and they thought that I was whoever they were hiding from. They gave me a $60 tip on a $25 order, so I didn't complain. Story 15. I delivered pizza for a few years back in college. Once a reasonably attractive girl answered the door, just completely naked. I got no vibes from it. It was just a matter-of-fact thing. It was like a normal transaction, except she was naked. She wasn't trying to stay behind a door like she just got out of the shower or something. She just opened the door wide open and was standing there. Maybe she was a nudist. Who knows? The other one was just depressing as hell. Woman was very drunk, is coming on to me very hard, and I'm trying to get out of there. She's like, say you got lost for a while and come in. A, she was drunk out of mind. B, not that it matters, but she was not attractive at all. So I'm trying to just play dumb and get out of there, telling her I had other deliveries to take, and she asks me how old I am. I tell her, and she says, that's how my daughter was, when she passed and breaks down sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't know what the heck to do. I tried to console her a little bit, but I really did have a bunch of other deliveries in my car. I didn't even take her money and just left. I told the restaurant that nobody was home. Story 16. Worst thing I ever saw was actually caused by another driver in our store. Let's call him Ivan. I was working as a shift manager and occasional driver at the time. Got a call from my boss while I was out on a delivery. He said he had an irate customer calling and screaming at him about one of the other drivers. Wasn't sure exactly what was going on except that the guy kept shouting, "It's everywhere!" He ruined it. He couldn't get a clear answer out of the guy, and Ivan wasn't answering his phone, so he wanted me to go check it out. Now, Ivan was a recent Eastern European immigrant who didn't speak much English and was a bit of a fish out of water, but seemed to be picking things up pretty quickly. I head to the address, and everything looks fine from the outside, but I barely make it out of my car before the front door slams open, and this furious little old Indian guy comes flying out of the front door, screaming at the top of his lungs. He keeps saying, "It's everywhere! You have to fix!" as he drags me over to the open door and just points at the stairs, which look like they're drenched in water. I step closer, and then the smell of crap hits me, and I realize what is all over the stairs. I walk the old guy outside of the house, away from the smell, and finally get at least the gist of the story from him. Apparently, Ivan asked a US bathroom as he was dropping off the pizza, definitely against policy, and the guy decided to let him. So Ivan went on upstairs, was up there for 10 minutes or so, and the owner started getting worried about the strange guy he let into his house. He heard the toilet flush 2 or 3 times, and then Ivan came barreling downstairs and out the door, not even stopping to say thank you. The old guy thinks he hears water still running, so he heads upstairs and finds the toilet overflowing and still running. Crap water all over the floor and starting to leak into the hall. I get on the phone with my district manager and explain the situation. He tells me to inform the guy that we are in no way responsible, as it's policy for our drivers to never go into a customer's house. He says to tell the guy to hire a plumber and to offer him a free pizza next time he orders to make up for it. Guy starts yelling again, but I just get in my car and roll out, and as I'm leaving, he's just standing there staring in his front door with his hands on his head. Ivan never called the store, never showed back, and as far as I'm aware, never answered his phone when we called, just disappeared. TL Doctor. New driver goes into a customer's house, clogs their toilet with a massive crap, floods their upstairs, and then completely disappears. Story 17. I went door to door for the US Census and had to complete the long form for a guy who was getting dressed for a drag show. It was nothing risque. He was behind a panel, dressing screen getting dressed. Also saw into another room with a whole bunch of SM gear on the walls. What I remember was he was a veteran with a master's degree who worked for the federal government and who was making a crap ton of money. Story 18. A story that I suppose I became for some Jehovah's. Gotten late from a late-night summer hockey game with friends at like 3 a.m. I was 19 at the time. 9 a.m. doorbell rings. What the heck? Go away, I say to myself. Rings again. No need sleepy. Rings again. Will you go away? Rings yet again. Who the heck is this? Out of bed all disheveled wearing but my polka-dotted boxer shorts. It was the 90s Sue Me. Rip open the front door. What to my wondering eyes should appear? But 2 Jehovah's Witnesses, girls, aged about 18 and 13 respectively. 13 years old jumps right into her spiel and goes on and on and on. I am a polite fella and don't like to interrupt people. I look to my right and notice that older one is cute as duck and has a smile on her face. Nice! I was in shape back then. This has potential. Look back at young one still rambling on. Back at the older. And then I notice that she's still smiling and not looking at my face or at me in the eyes. Odd, but I give her the help me look. She notices and smiles again. Stops her little sister dead in the middle of where I suppose I'll never be saved unless I follow the words of Jehovah or some other crap. She then says to me, "You're not really interested, are you?" Me, "No, not really." The little sister looks pissed she was interrupted. Big sister, "We'll let you go and have a great day." Me, "Thanks. Should have got her number. But I always forget to do that back then." They leave the front porch and head off to the neighbors, and I hear the older one giggle as she whispers something to her sister. Odd. Close the door and lock it. Start to head to the stairs when I notice that Mr. One-Eyed Trouser Snake was sunning himself. Story 19. Man, have I been waiting to tell this one. So I deliver beer, and there's this one address that we call the Crackhead House, because every time we deliver there, whoever answers the door is strung out on something or another. So one day I go to this house, and some greasy-looking dude opens up looking pretty out of it. Nothing new. The inside of the house behind him is pitch black, but I can hear that there are other people in the house. I tell him the cost, and he fumbles around with some crumpled-up cash before just handing me the whole wad. I count it out, and it's not enough, so I tell him he's short. "Ah, crap, man! Let me, hold on." He steps out of the doorway, letting the sun, the only source of light, illuminate a tiny bathroom, maybe about 20 feet away inside the house. I look up and make eye contact with someone sitting on the toilet, hunched over, craning their neck to look at me and squinting from the sunlight. After about 10 seconds of a really uncomfortable staring contest, I notice this person has a damn needle sticking. The person just slowly closed the bathroom door while still holding eye contact. I then hear some ruckus going on inside the house, like banging around. Some muffled loud talking, then a door slam. The greasy guy comes back looking kind of disheveled, and he keeps looking past me like someone was behind me or something. He shoves some more crumpled up cash at me, saying something like, "My bad, man, my fault." This should be right now. Sorry about, my bad. The whole time he's speaking kind of quickly and his eyes are darting back and forth between looking at me and looking behind me. I barely even took the cash out of his hand before he shut the door. I kind of just stood there for a second thinking, what the heck did I just witness? I turned to walk away and I hear the banging around and muffled yelling. Start again. I didn't know what the duck was going on in that house, but I didn't really think it was any of my business. Story 20. I worked for a politician running for a city council seat last summer. Nah, if anyone cares. My job was to go door to door and speak to registered Democrats and get awareness out about my boss's candidacy. She was trying to beat an incumbent, so she was having some trouble with it. I was given a block of apartments in a lower Manhattan project, and for the most part, people were nice enough. I would go door to door, handing out flyers and asking if people had heard of candidate. I got a few people who were asshats about it, but mostly because they were a Republican, who for some reason were registered as Dems or B, in their 80s or C, unabashedly racist. I'm a guy. Otherwise, people were perfectly polite about me interrupting their day and were totally understanding of the fact that it was just a job. The NSFW, or maybe NSFL part, was when I came to a door attributed to a Donnie last name. When I knocked, it took a few seconds before someone opened it. The first thing that hit me was the incredibly strong smell of garlic. Washing over me like a cloud of noxious gas, I swear someone was just burning the things raw. The person standing in the doorway is who I can only describe as Asian Danny DeVito crossbred with Baron Harkonnen. A roughly spherical, squat, balding man with at least B-cup moves. He had a still-lit joint between his fingers, and he was leaning against the door, very visibly unstable. It took me a second to realize that he was wearing only an ill-fitting black thong, and by ill-fitting I mean his man tackle was very nearly hanging out. It could barely be seen under his paunch, either. Trying my hardest to look at his fleshy, pockmarked, unshaven face rather than that, I quickly gave my speech. He seemed to be enraptured by my every word as he leaned there slack-jawed for a few seconds after I finished, still staring. And then he unsteadily straightened up and crossed his arms over the gelatinous man bosom. That's deep, is all I can remember him saying. I think he also tried to invite me in for tea, then shrugged when I quickly said no. I pushed the flyer into his flabby hand and got the ever-loving heck out of there as quickly as I could. Needless to say, I did not do that job again. Story 21. Not a delivery guy, but I showed up at my friend's house unannounced one day. I was going to a wedding, and his house was next door to the church, so I figured I'd say hello. And as I knocked, I looked in the window, and he was bare-ass naked and masturbating on his couch with the curtains wide open. I didn't even leave. I just made fun of him for a minute and then went to the wedding. Story 22. Lady lived in one of the more exclusive developments up on a hill, used to answer the door wearing a sheer robe, bikini bottoms, and heels. She was probably in her mid-30s and drop-dead gorgeous. She'd pay by check, writing it out on a table just opposite the door, bent over at the waist, showing off her ass. She always tipped well, and I don't just mean the peep show. There was another lady who answered the door wearing just heels, but she wasn't attractive in any way. She asked if I'd come in for a while. Nope. I have a lot of pizza's substance. Weed mostly, but I know of a few that were offered substance. One guy pretty much ordered pizza every time he got high and would offer bong hits off of his super bong, which was tall enough to rest on the floor, but you hit it while standing up. He had some of the best weed, too. Story 23. My first delivery while working Domino. Ring the doorbell, guy takes forever. I hear belt jingling and the likes. After 3 minutes, door opens and this large, older man opens the door, with his junk sticking out right above his jeans, like on display. It was horrific. I held the pizza in a way to block out the scary bits. I wish I knew I was allowed to refuse to deliver in that circumstance. Story 24. Drove for a local pizza place for a few months, and you do meet quite a few interesting characters as time goes on, but two houses stand out in particular. First was an elderly couple that I had delivered to on a few occasions. Really nice people always invited me in when it was raining, tipped well, and overall really friendly. Fast forward a few months later, wife answers the door in a nightgown. Odd since it's the middle of the day, but they're retired. Who am I to judge? I'm invited in to set the pizzas down for them. And out of the back room walks out 3 other older gentlemen dressed in tank tops and boxer shorts. The thing that gets me is I basically walked into the aftermath of a geriatric sex and how normal everyone was about it. As it turns out, they've been customers for a long time. This shop's been in business for over 20 years. And one of the owner's kids has walked in on far worse. Second wasn't so bad, made a delivery to a small trailer off of a back road. As soon as the door starts to open, I'm greeted by the strong scent of substance, and in front of me stands an older guy who looked like he was ripped straight out of the 60s. Long hair and beard, headband, and tapestries of different animals on the walls and being used as curtains. He hands me the money for the pie, pulls a 5 from his pocket, and says to me, "I'm out of singles, give me just a second." He ducks out of eyesight and returns dropping 2 nugs in my hand. I'm pretty dumbfounded by this, and he just gave me a nod, said drive safe, and closed the door. Story 25. Delivery for Panera Bread. Teenage girl answers door in robe, clearly insinuating more than the "I just out of the shower" look. I remember taking about 2 full steps back and handing her the clipboard for her signature, making sure I didn't look at her, and then promptly telling my manager as soon as I got back from the delivery. This happened right around the time Harvey Weinstein was being ousted from his company, but also there were some false reports of high-profile people getting accused of misconduct. I'm 34, married, and don't want to find myself in a situation that never happened. Story 26. Similar story to a lot of these, with a little bit different twist. I delivered a pizza to a house where the woman that answered the door was in a robe. While I was standing in the doorway, she went to the kitchen to get my money. When she came back, the robe was open and she had on a super sexy bra and panties. She asked me if I wanted to come in and play. I looked around and noticed a dude in the closet peeping out at us. I noped out of there. Story 27. More funny than anything else. For my first ever job, I helped deliver groceries for a chain supermarket, right when shopping from home became available to everyone. We'd get a lot of people with young kids, senior citizens, and professionals that commute from the city. One of our regulars was a lovely older couple. They were 2 of my favorites just because they were very nice people. Always had a lovely conversation. The husband insisted in helping me with the bags and tipping, ECT. Well, they had a few dogs, very well behaved. Except this one time I came with their weekly order. After knocking on the door with my clipboard, the woman answered, and that's when I saw it. 2 of their dogs going at it like they were getting paid to duck. She was oblivious to the situation. It was hard for me to keep a straight face, rattling off her food order while her pooches were on the Pound Town Express. Story 28. On the other side, I ordered Chinese takeout, a lot, and the delivery guy knew to use my side door, as I always left the gate open for him. I'm getting out of the shower and hear the door knock, and my dog comes running from, thinking it's my delivery, although 30 minutes early. I run to the door in my towel. I opened the door and instantly jumped back and half closed it. There were 2 Mormons on my steps, and they looked like they couldn't be a day past 18. Their faces got red. Mine got red. I say something like, "Thought you were food," and then close the door so just my head is sticking out. I take their papers, tell them maybe talk another day, but I needed to go dry off. They tried to stop by to drop off more info, talk to me almost every week after that. I don't think I was that sexy that I attracted them back. I think they were just friendly and trying to get recruits. But I think I was their "what just happened" person. Story 29. Naked lady and Mexican dude in his underwear. I got there early, apparently, after they ducked and showered, and the lady couldn't find the money for like 5 minutes. She had a towel on, but it fell off. I actually was in the apartment door closed because it was too damn hot outside not to be, even though it was night. Sometimes there were substance. I was offered some once, and it was okay. Steve saw a brick once, delivering to some football player's house. Large cash order, guys didn't answer door or phone, but he heard them in the house. He checked the back area and saw an open door, and had guns pointed at him because nobody told the dealer they ordered pizza. But that guy always hands over $100 and says, "Keep the change, so whatever." Story 30. There was this guy I delivered to a few times in college. My boss kind of gave me a look as I went out the door with the food, and I knew I was in for something. When I arrived, it was a pretty nice house. Normal-looking guy wearing scrubs. But something told me he wasn't a doctor. He invited me in as some people do. In the middle of his living room was a woman completely ducking naked. She stood up, walked over, and asked what he ordered. I worked at a calzone shop near my college, so you guessed it, calzones. She's still completely naked, and as I try not to look, he says, "Go ahead, look. Isn't she beautiful?" I politely agree. He smacks her on the ass, and she runs away to lay on the ground reading a magazine or something. He ushers me over to this amazing glass bar and starts pouring himself a drink. He offers me one. I may or may not have accepted. We shoot the breeze about whatever. He's got all sorts of advice on women and what this girl likes while she occasionally overheard and giggled. Then he says, "Yeah, you probably gotta head out. Here you go. Keep the change, and I'll see you again sometime." Gives me a $14 tip on a $12 order. Strangest experience I've had by far. Every time I delivered there, it was a different girl, naked in his living room. Story 31. Girl answered the door wet in a towel. Not sure why she ordered pizza, then jumped in the shower. Worst was a hotel delivery with high school sports team of some sort. Guy was paying, and another guy walked out of the bathroom bare-assed. Didn't even try to cover up. Sadly, no hot adult scenarios for me. Story 32. Worked for Domino's. Not exactly NSFW, but a junkie said she would pay me extra if I stopped off somewhere and bought cigarettes for her. I did. I assumed she meant the cost of the pizza, the cost of the cigarettes, plus a little extra. I get there. She pays me for the pizza, takes the cigs, and shuts the door. She only paid me for the pizza. I bang on her door, and she says, "Sorry, I thought I had more money than I did." And she disappears for a second and comes back with a little grocery store bag with a Game Boy Color and 4 or 5 Game Boy games and hands it to me. This was 2005-ish, so none of this was valuable. Stuff like Zelda, Pokemon Yellow, and some other games I don't remember. I was super happy with how this transaction went down, that it didn't dawn on me until recently that she probably gave me her Game Boy and games. I tell myself that the Game Boy and the games were already old and probably not of any interest to the person that actually owned them. That way I feel a little less like a piece of crap. Story 33. Alas, I delivered pizzas on and off through my 20s and never saw so much as a bare tit. But there was one place I worked. I delivered to this old guy's apartment. He answered the door with no pants on, but had on a dress shirt, so the shirt tails concealed his junk. I noticed while making the transaction that his apartment utterly reeked of crap. All his furniture was stacked up with towels that had telltale brown stains all over them. Best I can figure is that the poor guy was uncontrollably incontinent. He ended up ordering weekly, and we both got very good at ignoring everything, except the pizza box and the cash changing hand. Story 30. I remember going door to door as a kid, selling candy for something. Knocked on this one door, and the lady who answered had wet spots on her shirt from her leaking milk. Story 35. A couple years ago, I was working for Orkin Pest Control and was still being trained on doing the regular inspection. My coworker and I walk up to this one house and knock on the door. A woman in her mid-20s opens the door and is completely topless. She looks incredibly tired and 100% disinterested about who the heck could have been at her door. Once she sees that it's US, she says something like, "Oh, that's right, you were coming by today. Please, come in." We follow her into the house and we see a crib with a newborn baby sitting in it. About halfway to the couch, she realizes that she's topless and apologizes and puts a shirt on. She had just finished breastfeeding her son and didn't even realize she didn't have a shirt on. My coworker and I were very understanding and professional about the whole thing. That is until we got back into the truck and laughed about it all the way to our next stop. I have another one about a nude photographer that I could tell too. Story 36. All right, I read almost all of them, and this is the only one I have that isn't similar. Was delivering for Domino's in a blizzard. Got a lot of my stories start that way. Some guys call in and want delivery to their fish house, which is no biggie. Right as I leave the store, and their app swaps to en route, they call me and ask me if I'm old enough to bring them some beer. LQ is only about a mile from the lake access, so I do. Super cool dudes. Tipped me like $10 extra to pick them up beer so they didn't have to get off the lake. Story 37. Drove my little sister around selling boxes of chocolates one year. Fundraising for her band to go to England for some reason. Anyways, we got to this one house, an attractive, large-breasted blonde woman opened the door in a robe. Barely in the robe, I might add. My little sister stared at the front step while she mumbled her selling pitch for the boxes of chocolate. She is shy, and that was par for the day. However, the entire time my sister was trying to sell her boxes of chocolate. This woman was trying to sell me what was under her robe without my sister seeing. She bought 2 boxes of chocolates, and I went back to visit her later that evening, once I dropped off my sister. Story 38. Delivered to a house, and this girl in her underwear and no bra opens the door, and there, and a few other girls there in various states of undress. I think they were disappointed that I was a woman. Seemed like they wanted to give a rando guy a surprise and a funny story to tell. Also delivered to people who were shooting up. That was awkward. They offered me some, and I was like, nope, but they tipped $9, so that was cool. Also delivered to 2 different apartments in a crap neighborhood where it was a few guy roommates, and they had signs inside, but visible from the door that basically said, "Girls, if you come in this apartment, you know what is going down. Don't come in here and try to be like, no. You have been warned." Story 39. Former meter reader here. I could tell stories all day. Called on a house, meter indoors. Buxom Chippy in a wife beater answers door. Her little poofy dog is going nuts. She picks it up, and as it's struggling, it manages to pull both sleeve holes inward, and whoomp out pop both titties. Another stop. Buxom Italian woman. Every month, I happen to catch her just as she's finishing up her aerobics. Danskins, sweaty cleavage, the whole deal. She would always invite me in for coffee. So I'd go in, get my boner, and contemplate if it was worth risking my job over. Then one time, she drops that her husband is a NYPD cop. Nope, the duck out of there. Story 40. Last year, I worked as a delivery boy for Domino's. I walked up to a door that was partly open, and I didn't know where else to knock, so my git knocked on the door. It slowly starts to swing open to a dude on the couch getting a BJ. Then my git decides to close the door and re-knock. I cringe at this moment in my life. Guy comes to the door with just boxers on and doesn't say a word about anything. We exchange money for pizza, got a $10 tip, and left. I wonder if he was getting his brains fondled so much he didn't realize. Either way, duck that. Probably the most NSFW story I have. Story 41. I did a door-to-job when I was about 19. It was dark outside and the front room curtains were open. I thought, as I walked past the window, there was a very large lady sitting naked on the sofa. The strangest part is that she had a young boy and girl, maybe 10 or the under, resting against her very saggy boobs. As I passed the window, she jumped up, kids flying in either direction. After ringing the doorbell, she came to the door holding a robe around her, looking very flustered. Safe to say she had no interest in what I was selling. I then walked away, wondering if I really had seen what I thought I had. Then the next hour, getting the image out my head. Story 42. AGM of a hotel met another AGM at a training function after being hired. This guy allegedly got personally requested to come fix a broken ACE in a room only to find the two occupants, young women, completely naked in the bed. Supposedly, the three of them had quite a good time. Now, I know you're saying this sounds like bullcrap, and I would be willing to agree with you if this guy didn't look like a mixture between Mario Lopez and The Rock. Lucky git. Story 43. Just once, I saw titties. Very nice. Young, perky titties. She was beautiful, and her body was perfect. She handed me they coats for the pizza and closed the door. I didn't even have time to get aroused, and like that, it was over. Story 44. This pizza delivery started with nothing out of the ordinary. An apartment complex I've delivered to 100 times previous. I knock, and the door opens to three incredible attractive women who are all topless and very flirty. They invite me inside to eat some pizza. I pose for a picture with them, and then I leave. It was incredible. That day I became a legend. Turns out they were all strippers and just wanted a pizza before going to the club and starting their shift. Story 45. I delivered to the hotel over the local strip club once. It was pretty much condemned, but the dancers would stay there while they worked the bar downstairs. Anyhow, girl comes to pay for the pizza completely naked, and other girls are running around between the roof where they were tanning nude and their rooms. Story 46. Not as bad as many on here, but my first ever delivery was to a hotel room, and a naked Asian man opened the door and carried out the transaction as if he were not naked. Story 47. A giant purple sex toy on their stairs. I used to deliver pizzas and someone left their front door open with the storm door closed. I could clearly see this sex toy on their stairs. He came to the door, said 1 second please, shut the door, and when he came back, it was gone and he was very noticeably flustered. Story 48. A group of girls in bikinis. They answered thinking I was some hot pizza delivery dude. Sorry, just some average 20-something chick. They were pretty disappointed. I've never seen any hot delivery people in the places I've worked, had delivery from. I'm sure those pretty people have better job opportunity. Story 49. I am a body painter. We were working on a paint and the girl opened the door for the pizza guy. He was super happy. The paint was themed on a Mike album, and we went to his concert where she jumped up on stage. We ended up sipping cognac with him after the show. Super nice guy. Story 50. Arrived at an apartment door with a yin-yang on it and a note that said, "Enter, clothing optional score, been waiting for my adult moment." Nope. Fat, white-bearded Korean man. Said money's on the dresser, extra 50 if you stay a while. Grabbed the money with the 50, bolted. He started after me, to which I screamed, "I'm 17!" Instant stop, pushed me out, dead-bolted door behind me. Story 51. Wanted to treat my husband to a surprise BJ for our anniversary. Got naked, waited for him to come home from work. I heard a car pull up and footsteps approach, so flung open the door, bare-ass naked. Turns out he'd ordered delivery as a surprise for me, so I wouldn't have to cook. The delivery guy got the biggest surprise of any of us. Story 52. As a delivery driver, the most frequent thing I see is college-age girls answering the door only wearing a t-shirt. I've never been invited in, though. A close second is fat guys answering the door in Speedos. Why people wear a Speedo in the middle of winter, I don't think I want to know. Story 50. My fiancé worked door-to-door sales for 8 years. Says the most NSFW things that have happened to him are a toss-up between having sex with clients, 3 separate incidents, clients came on to him, or having a gun pulled on him. Not related. Story 54. I was setting up the breakfast bar at the hotel I worked at, and some young woman comes down with a see-through sleep shirt on and no bra. You couldn't miss it. It wasn't that exciting as she had seen a few breakfast bars in her life and was rolling out of the shirt.